Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in once again to the Iron Purpose podcast. This is episode 6 featuring my aunt, Rachael Anderson. We get into a lot of stuff. We start kind of with riff-raffing back and forth and get into some pretty deep conversations. And then we get back into her life a little bit from when she was younger all the way into what she's doing now and how she was able to overcome a lot of different things, but mainly one of the biggest things, her own mind stuff she used to tell herself and being able to get over that and replacing them with positive things and having a more positive outlook on life while entering into this new journey of her business that she's been involved in and the success that it has had and the impact that it's had on her life and those around her. It was a very fun time. I love her to death. This is episode 6 of the Iron Purpose podcast featuring Rachael Anderson. Stay sharp, everybody. Everybody, I'm so excited to have with me today my favorite aunt named Rachel. I had to think for a second. Yeah, you're the only one I have named Rachel. So my favorite aunt named Rachel. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm great, B. How are you?
So good. Thanks for being on here. I'm super excited to finally get a chance to sit down and chat with you. I know whenever I do chat with you, I feel like we have really good conversations, even if it's just short little ones. Even like one time I ran into you at the bank and we ended up having just a very meaningful, long conversation and like, hey, check out this book. I think you really enjoy this. And so I think it's gonna be super cool to get the chance to pick your brain for the next hour or so.
Thanks. I'm really honored, Bailey. Thank you.
Yeah. So you just got back from a trip. I've been very excited to hear about it. Can you kind of tell me a little bit about it? What was your favorite part? What'd you do?
Sure. Well, I had a friend invite me to a river cruise through Germany. And so I did that for 8 days with her and her sisters and some other family members. And then my husband, your Uncle Keith, met me in Amsterdam. And we stayed in Amsterdam and London and Paris for the next, I don't know, 7 or 8 days. And it was my first time in Europe. I know
Oh
your
wow.
first time in Europe recently. And just the culture and the food and the architecture and just the old, the ancientness of everything that we saw and experienced was so cool. And I love history. I love to learn about stuff. And so just, standing in front of a cathedral that was built in 1249, I'm like, what? It was incredible. So I loved it. And we're such foodies. We ate our way through Europe. I have 6 pounds to lose because of that. So please ignore the puffy face, but it was
No.
worth every calorie because we had just had so much fun. So much
Oh,
fun.
that's awesome. Do you know what your
Yeah.
favorite food was that you ate?
Oh boy. Well, it was not blood sausage. I will tell you
Ooh.
that. I tried. I know, right? I'm willing to try everything.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to judge anything by its cover. I should have probably judged blood sausage by its cover. It was just what it sounds like. It was pretty horrible.
Ugh. All right.
But my favorite, we did high tea at our hotel in London, and that was really fun. To my husband's English, and so he just enjoyed trying teas, and I enjoyed the scones. Scones in
Mm.
England are very different than they are in America. They're not dry, crusty. They're like little round. They look like a filet mignon made out of bread, and they were so delightful and clotted
Mm.
cream. So plan on Christmas because I'm planning on trying to make them and bring them to grandma's because it was
Ooh.
so nummy.
All
Yeah.
right. I'm sure
And
you're gonna crush it.
he's gonna try to make clotted cream if we can figure it out. That sounds horrifying, but it's
God.
it's really good. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's just a different way to make butter, basically. So
Right. Okay. Was it
yeah,
Keith's first time over there too, or he
it
seems like a
was.
okay.
Yeah, he's been to Canada and Mexico, but never to Europe. And he was pretty
Interesting.
sad that I was going without him. He kept like looking at airline tickets, and we figured out he could fly to Amsterdam pretty reasonably. So
Mm.
he met me. Everyone thought he was Dutch. Everyone in the Netherlands is like really tall and really good looking. Like it's the prettiest country I've ever been to.
Mm-hmm.
People are beautiful, and the culture was so fun. But a couple of people said to him literally like, "Oh, I thought you were Dutch," because they would say hello to him like they say in
Uh-huh.
Amsterdam, and he would say hi back, and they would realize you're not Dutch.
Oh,
So
that's funny.
that was really fun.
I could see him like playing into it, like playing a joke on him and then just
And
hey, you betcha.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he just got the giggles about it. So we just
Uh,
giggled every time. It was great.
you said you went to Paris as well.
Mm-hmm.
What'd you think of that?
I sounds horrible. I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I loved walking through Paris, and we found a nice little cafe, and we had some croissants and really good lattes. But I don't know that I need to go back. I would totally go back to Germany and
Hmm.
London and Amsterdam in a heartbeat.
Sure.
Yeah.
I kind of got the same vibe from Venice and Courtney. I think Courtney feels the same way a little bit about Paris, and she
Mm,
could correct me if I'm wrong. But like Venice, you see, it's like the waterways and it's so romanticized, and you can take your gondola tour and everything. And like we got over there, and it was neat. Don't get me wrong, but like it was just kind of run down. There's a lot of pigeons. It kind of smelled like sewage a little bit. So it's
yeah.
like, and
Hmm.
Courtney's like, we should go on a gondola ride, and I was like, all right, let's look at it. It was like $90 for an hour ride, and like I said, they romanticize it. It's this nice, beautiful, but like in real life, they're like competing with speedboats as they're going by, and they're yelling at the other ones, and it's like, all right, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
I'll pass. This is good. This
Hmm.
is good enough for me. But
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if Paris is a similar thing. It just wasn't what you
Yeah.
expected, or
It was really amazing to see Notre Dame. That it's
mm.
still under construction from the fire a few years
Oh,
ago.
sure, sure.
So we kind of had to look at it through scaffolding, no fault of their own. That was a beautiful building. It was
Mm-hmm.
really cool. My husband's a mechanical engineer, and so the Eiffel Tower was at the top of his list. That was the first place we went. We walked there from our hotel,
Mm.
and we stayed near the Arch of Triumph. And so that was really cool. Like it was beautiful, but I think it would be very smelly and dirty in the summertime. I was
Sure.
glad it was 30 degrees Fahrenheit,
Right.
so I didn't have to smell it because it was pretty grubby. Sadly, that sounds so sad. It sounds so snotty of me to say I really
Right.
hated Paris, but I don't need to go back. I've
Yeah.
actually found the people in Germany far more friendly,
Mm.
um, willing to have conversations even about World War II.
Oh,
They
wow.
We had a tour guide that brought up World War II and said, "Can I tell you my point of view? My mother was a child during the war." And that was so unexpected. And we just had this beautiful conversation about not hiding our history.
Mm.
About he was one of the first classes as 12-year-olds to go visit one of the concentration camps near Cologne.
Wow.
And before that, they had kind of tried to suppress the horror of World War II and decided as a country, like he said, it went to a vote that they were not going to hide this because they never want it to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
And praise the Lord, I think in America right now, we're in this weird place of suppressing and trying to change history. And that's when we get ourselves into trouble. That's
Mm-hmm.
when it repeats itself. So we have to
Right.
learn from our past. And I so appreciated that conversation with him. It was great. Um, and it's such a beautiful place. I really had zero expectations for Germany, except for we floated by the county that my grandmother's parents came from Germany.
Wow.
And so I was kind of like, okay, somewhere over there, I might have some cousins because there goes Rhineland, where my grandpa Frank Berger came from. And so that was really cool. But I didn't have any expectations. I, I didn't know what to think. And I would take Keith back there immediately. And some of us have decided we're not doing a family vacation. We're going to London for Christmas next year.
There we go.
It was beautiful. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did Keith get to go to Germany too, you said? Or no?
No, he did not.
Okay.
Nope. He met me in Amsterdam, and we stayed there for a couple of days and just hiked around and, went to the Van Gogh Museum, and the Anne Frank house is in
Mm.
Amsterdam. I'd forgotten that. Canals, it's 150 feet below sea level, and they've done so much work with dikes to allow them to build this beautiful city in this county with this amazing farming. I saw the windmills, and they were exactly what I had hoped for. That was very romanticized in my head, and it did not disappoint at all.
Mm.
But his goal was London. He really wanted to spend a lot of time. As you know, you guys are part English, and your great grandma Bertha was half English, I believe, and so that he kind of identifies with more so. And so he really enjoyed London as well, and Oxford. They were our favorite
Sure. Okay.
places. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. I know he's a history buff too, so I could see him going back to Germany to want to see some of those things. But that's
Mhm.
going back to what you said about how that tour guide wasn't afraid to share his side of it and his opinion of it, because there was a lot of very dark things surrounding
Yeah.
their side of the war, and for him to
Mhm.
say he's not necessarily taking ownership of it. He's not saying this was my responsibility, but this is something that happened in my country in the past that I'm not proud of, and I don't want it to happen again. These people
Right.
were not treated right, and we're going to open that up so that
Mhm.
so that that learning can continue. That's pretty
Yeah.
neat. That's pretty
Yeah.
neat.
It was very unexpected. And he asked permission. Can I tell you my point of view? Because he's had people come take these tours like I did and say, you're a really nice guy. You're funny. We wanted to like you, but we can't. We're Jewish. And that happened 3 or 4 times. And we were kind of sad when he said that. And he said, actually, no, that opened incredible conversation. And I was able to apologize for my country and
Wow.
ask for forgiveness. I'm getting goosebumps
Yeah.
thinking about it. And he said, and now I asked permission. Can we have this conversation? Because it's true. It is true. But his mother was a child when this happened. There's
Mm-hmm.
no responsibility at all. She was
Right.
7 when the war ended, I believe. And so, and he said too, Billy, I thought it was really interesting. Like they hid everything. Like nobody knew when he was growing up. No one talked about it. No one knew what Grandpa did in the war. Like it just was silence. And then one day, people started finding things in Grandpa's basement and finding their teacher in a textbook in an SS uniform. And he said that just blew the lid off of everything. And they decided, do we keep trying to lie, or are we going to be honest and prevent this in the
Mm.
future? And so I was very impressed with his point of view, his take on all of that, and his wanting his children to know the truth. So as they move forward, as now they're like 10, 11, 12 years old, they know what happened in their country, and he doesn't have to worry about them
Mm-hmm.
participating in something like that ever. You
Right.
know.
It's interesting that this got brought up because I think I've explained to you before, but for those who don't know, I work at the jail here or locally in Crow County, and we have a program in there called the Impact Unit, and it's a lot of like conversation facilitation. They do some mental health work. They get physically fit by working out, getting that physical side in as well. This past week, we had to cut the week short. We didn't get to do the normal planned programming because of Thanksgiving and then Black Friday. So we decided to put an addiction week in there. So they got to talk about addiction a little bit. And one of the things the guy said was, the first thing to do is to admit when we make that mistake, acknowledge when we are struggling with something so that we can move forward from it. And it got me thinking. I asked him, I was like, where is that fine line between acknowledging that you made that mistake and then identifying with it? Because the story like you shared, like that gentleman for so long probably identified with that mistake in his history. Back to your trip, that tour guide probably identified with that mistake rather than just acknowledging that it had happened. So this inmate coming forward now, the inmate, he had said, when I first came into the jail, he struggled with anger, he struggled with drugs and all this other stuff, and he said, if police are going to show up to my door and arrest me, they're going to treat me like a criminal, then I'm going to give them a criminal. I'm going to identify as a criminal, and I'm going to make this as difficult as I can for these people. And he came into the jail and he was causing fights, and he didn't want to do anything that we said, and he kept causing issues with me, and I had to lock him down at one point, and he told me to shove my discipline, where the sun don't shine, for lack of better words. And to see him progress through his time sitting in there, he slowly shifted his perspective from, and this was him answering my question, where that fine line is. He said, I slowly started to understand that issue isn't who I am. I don't have to identify with that. I can move forward and acknowledge it. Like there's a difference between identifying and acknowledging. I can acknowledge that it happened, give myself the grace to say, sure, this is something that I did, or this is something that my country did, or my family did, or whatever it was, but it doesn't make me who I am, and I don't have to continue down that same path or that same trajectory. So I don't know. It's a very neat correlation. It's really cool how that got brought up and how this is something that I've been thinking about myself. Like you don't have to identify with something so evil and so bad. Like you can still acknowledge it and understand that it did happen and go, you know what? My kids, I don't want that in this guy. I don't want it my kids to go down the same path. So I can tell them, "Hey, sure, dad might be in jail right now and you may not want to try to accept advice from me, because I'm sitting in here and I'm saying, hey, don't do drugs, don't do these things. And some kids may be like, well, wait a minute, you're in there right now because you did those things. Like, yeah, but
Yeah.
they don't make me who I am. Let's
Yeah.
move forward. Let's grow. And that's really cool that tour guide was able to say that. I don't identify with this.
Yeah.
I'm acknowledging it, and we're gonna move on and we're gonna grow together. And I think a lot of people could learn from something like that, especially nowadays with how much division there is in the country. It's like we don't have to identify with our past mistakes and our past
Mm-hmm.
failures or whatever it is that is bringing us down. We can acknowledge they happen and move on and grow together.
Right. Absolutely. And you just made me think of a conversation I had with myself and God about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, but we like put labels on ourselves. And I just said, oh, I'm just ornery. And then it was like the Holy Spirit was, Rachel, no. And then I thought, it was like, you're right, Lord. Why am I allowing that label and putting it on myself? No one is saying it to me. I thought it. And so I
Hmm.
was like, well, I'm ornery, so this is how I'm going to respond to something. And it's like, stop. And I listened to a speaker once, and her shtick is hashtag stop it. And I think of that a lot, like hashtag stop it. You're not ornery. You might be choosing to act that way right now, but don't put that label on yourself.
Hmm.
And I think as and mindset is like the thing that I talk about all the time with my team and with myself. These are conversations I have with myself all the time. But if we can look at how we have labeled ourselves, things that we just accept as fact about ourselves, lies that we
Mm.
believe about ourselves, usually they're not even true. And we embrace them. And that's really where my journey started. Like, I'm totally segueing this. I hope you don't mind. But
100%. That's
um,
beautiful.
this was how my journey started. I was at a meeting. I'm in network marketing in this company, this health and wellness company. I've been there for 10 years now. So 10 years ago, this last fall, I was up in Grand Rapids, Minnesota at this little restaurant having a meeting with my upline who had flew in from Vegas. And she asked this question of the group. She said, what are 2 words that you think about yourself that aren't even true? And that was the first time anyone had ever talked in my presence about personal responsibility within personal growth and development. And I immediately knew what my 2 words were. Immediately that I was, well, actually, I had 3 that I was fat, that I was stupid, and that I was ugly. And I would tell you those things at the beginning of a conversation just in case you hadn't picked up on it. Like, I just want you to know that I already know that I'm stupid. So if I make fun of myself right now and I talk about being an idiot, it's out there in the open and we can move forward. And I actually had a swear jar. I started this swear jar and had it on top of the fridge. And I told my kids, if you catch me saying fat, stupid, or ugly,
Mm.
I will put $1 in here. And when we fill it up, I'll take you to the Mall of America or Valley Fair. I don't remember which one I promised, but they were like my little Holy Spirits, especially my youngest daughter was like, Mom, because I would say, oh, why am I so stupid? And she'd be like, Mom, put $1 in the jar because I didn't realize how much I had really made that my identity. And I
Mm.
would joke about it, but I really believed it to be true. I'm not stupid. I'm not fat. I'm not ugly.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. But I said it all the time. And what I love about that, and I might choke up a little bit about this, is my daughters don't call themselves fat or stupid or ugly because their
Mm.
mother stopped doing it. And if that's a chain that broke, if that's the only chain that broke in our family, that my granddaughters won't talk that way about themselves, I am so grateful that Helen asked me that question.
Mm.
What are some lies that you believe about yourself that aren't even true? And like, did some just pop up for you? What are they? Are they even true? They're probably not. So let's switch the tape. Let's change the record and get those out of our brain. And we
Mm-hmm.
can. And fun fact, you can change your DNA, literally your DNA, in 6 months by how you change your thoughts. That's kind of mind blowing.
That is.
And
Wow.
that causes longevity, that causes better health, that helps prevent cancer and Alzheimer's and all these things when we start to think with some more positivity and pull out
Mm-hmm.
criticism, negativity, judgmentalism, legalism, like all the things, self-righteousness, all of that. Like, ugh. Did you see my mouth when I was even saying those words? I was like, because they suck the life out of us. And so why not learn to remove them, replace them with truth, replace them with who God says we are, who we know ourselves to be, find our strengths, and then we know how to move ahead better serving Him and our families and the people that we work for. Like, all of it gets improved when we start to take those junk words out of our vocabulary and chuck them into hell where they belong, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you think of them being just a word, but how much power and how much,
Mm-hmm.
how serious the effects it can have on yourself, but other people as well. Like you said, breaking that thing. If your daughters are not saying, I'm not fat, I'm not stupid, I'm not ugly to
Mm-hmm.
themselves, they're also most likely not going to say that to other people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if they believe in themselves saying, I'm not these things, so why would I say this to somebody else, or
Mm-hmm.
to somebody else? And you
Yeah.
hear people bad mouthing each other, that's an opportunity for them to say, no, 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 yeah, we're not going to say that. We're going to stand up for each other, because that's, they don't have to identify with that. It's
Yeah. Yeah.
oof.
And usually I'm not going to talk smack about anybody else. It's going to be about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that we say to ourselves, if we said those out loud, like, your best friend would smack you right upside the head and be like, don't talk about my friend that way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
stop that. And so if we can get that out of our thinking and out of our brains, first of all, we just stop being so dang hard on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and give ourselves some grace when we make a mistake, when we do something stupid. It's not an identity anymore. We just realize, I just messed up. I got to fix this.
I love that you said that, when we do something stupid, not when we are stupid. Because
Mm,
stupid things happen, but that doesn't mean that I'm stupid. Like, I'm gonna say something silly, but it doesn't mean I'm a moron. Like, it's, you
hmm.
just, oh, probably shouldn't have said that. We're gonna learn from it. Like,
Yeah.
and I've found myself even joking around at work and saying something, and then, like, after the fact, I'm like, man, I don't know if I should have said that. And going back to my sergeant and saying, hey, I said this. I apologize. I should not have said that, especially in front of people. Because
Hmm.
who knows how people are gonna perceive it nowadays either. But yeah, that's beautiful. I like that you said, like, when I do something stupid. Yeah, you said the stupid word, but it's in a totally different context. Like, you're not identifying with that
Hmm.
action.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because we
Woo!
are. We're going to mess up. We're
Yeah.
not going to do this perfect. No
Right.
matter how much growth we do and how much we read our Bible and talk to Jesus, we're going to mess stuff up, and we're going to make really poor choices, or we're going to
Mm-hmm.
say really unnecessary things. It's just a part of life. But finding that grace and forgiving ourselves, I think, allows us to move forward and extend that to other people a lot more readily. And I think when we're miserable inside, it comes out. As a man thinketh, so is he. That's a proverb. And it comes out. And then we apply standards onto people that it's not their responsibility to bear.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have this expectation that everybody should be acting this way, talking this way, being this way, and it's none of our business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm responsible for Rachel, and if I have little kids at home, I'm responsible for what they're seeing. But at the same time, it's none of my business what you do. I can love you. I can pray for you. There might be an opportunity where I'm like, I do need to say something if you see something unhealthy in someone.
Sure.
But at the same time, I feel like I mind my business a lot better when I'm taking care of myself. If that makes any sense.
It does. 100% it does.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. We were only supposed to just start for a little bit, having, brief riff-raff conversation, and we're 22 minutes in. That's amazing stuff. I love that.
Mm.
So, kind of getting back to, you kind of talked about your journey a little bit. Let's take it back even a little bit farther, like when you were growing up and stuff. And for those who don't know who you are, for what you do want to share, just kind of start from wherever you want to start, and kind of take it
Okay.
away. The floor is
Sure.
yours.
Well, I'm a child of the 70s. And so that, and into the 80s, I didn't grow up in a Christian home. My mom and dad found Christ when I was a little bit older. And but we were a very stereotypical family in the middle of Minnesota. My mom was a homemaker. My dad was an over-the-road trucker. I just have one little brother. He's someone I'm so proud of. He just retired from the military last year. Served overseas, 3 tours, almost 3 years in war, and I'm very proud of him.
Mm.
But we, nothing is super remarkable about life. But I do remember a phrase that was said a lot, like "Don't get too big for your britches." There was this weird thing. My cousin and I have talked about this. Like everybody kind of wasn't supposed to be awesome. You were supposed to be small and quiet, be seen, not heard. I'm not talking about my parents, just I think our generation in general was kind of raised this way. And so even having like a conversation, I wasn't around adults having adult conversations till I was an adult because we were, kids were in the living room, kids were sitting at a card table down the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of time with adults. I laugh thinking about my family. I spent every Sunday with my grandparents. Sunday afternoons, we'd go to my dad's parents for lunch, and my grandma would make all this food for us. Nobody brought anything. Nobody brought anything to share. She did it all. And then we'd go outside and play kickball. And my grandpa was in his 80s and still playing kickball with
Mm.
us. And just this big strapping man who I loved so much. He was so funny, had the best laugh. And my grandpa Ray Mulholland, and but there would always come a time when some uncle of mine would say something lippy, and I remember once, I don't know why I'm even sharing this, but one of my uncles mouthed off, and another one grabbed him and like literally ripped his shirt off of his body, and then a fight broke out and fists were flying and grandma's yelling, "Come over here!" And all the kids scatter and watch these crazy redneck uncles of mine
That's
duke it
amazing.
out for a while. So funny, so funny. And then, but they loved each other. We still gathered every Sunday and ate
Uh-huh.
dinner and played kickball. And somebody would throw a punch, and grandma would be like, "Oh, you boys!" She had all these boys. And my other side of the family, my grandpa Bert was a farmer. And so he would let me sit on a cow and I would sing songs to him when I was a little girl. And he never told me to be quiet. He
Mm.
loved it. And he taught me songs. I just taught Oakley his Had a Little Monkey song this weekend. So fun, our 2-year-old granddaughter. And my grandma Millie would let us be in the kitchen with her. So would my grandma Aggie. I just had wonderful grandparents, and I love being a grandmother. And I think of them often when I'm teaching them a song or making something. My grandma made stuff for us all the time. I remember when I was little, there's this photo of me and 4 of my cousins with little matching red plaid felt jackets that grandma made and like
Mm.
put snaps on them. And I still have these huge mittens that she made for me when I had a paper out, so my hands would be warm. And she did everything with the fruit of her hands. And so I think of her a lot when I'm knitting. I have her knitting needles. And
Oh,
so I'll
wow.
knit something and think, oh, grandma would be so proud of me. Because all I did when I was a little kid was make a crocheted chain. How many of us learned how to crochet making a chain?
Sure.
You know, never did anything with it. So now I knit and think of her. My other grandma was a terrible cook, but she microwaved her bacon like, ugh, so bad.
Oh.
But she loved us and she loved to spend time with us. And so she called me every day. I remember until she passed away around 10 o'clock in the morning when I was a teenager, I get a phone call and it was my grandma Millie. And we would chat for like an hour. And it was wonderful. That's actually choking me up.
Mm.
I miss that. She was great. I wish she could have known my husband. And I'm just seeing the wonderful kids and grandkids that I have. I think all of my grandparents would be really proud of me, proud of us, and maybe a little surprised that I kind of pushed out of the norm. God gave me a job that's very different. And a lot of people think that I'm in like a pyramid scheme business because I'm in network marketing. Um, but that's not the case at all. And I just get to help people feel better and pay their bills. And I'm really grateful for that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had such a fun childhood. Cousins everywhere, grandparents, aunts and uncles, and it was just a great life.
Yeah, how cool is that to see? And I know, like, my mom grew up similarly with a family, a big family and
Mhm.
brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and stuff. And for us to be able to continue that, us
Yeah.
the generation just below you guys, I think of, as you're telling those stories, I think of us at your house playing kickball or growing up, even with the
Hmm.
younger kids playing football in the backyard. And there probably could have been times where punches were thrown and they never were. So maybe there was some correction in there by you. So good job.
I'd have just been yelling at that point in life, unfortunately. But today I wouldn't yell. I would laugh about
Oh, so next time we're playing, if you come throw a fist, I'm gonna
it.
be like,
Yes.
hey, all right, I'll give it to you.
Listen, Mulholland. Yeah. That's when my redneck would come out. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Funny.
So growing up, you talked about these people and a couple of them, how they stood out as role models to you. Is there anyone, like any other specific thing that stands out to you as someone you really looked up to growing up who kind of helped shape you into who you are today from a younger age?
Well, when I was really little, it really was my mom and dad.
Mm.
My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and so, just being around her, she has such a servant's heart. She's so giving. She'll do anything to help you. She went to work when I was 14. She got it, or 15, got a job. She actually got a job at McDonald's so
Mm.
she could help pay for our tuition to go to a private school, to go to Lake Region. And a friend from Sunday school had a restaurant, Pastor Wayne, and so Wayne was like, "Wait a second, why don't you come to work for me? I'll make sure you're home when your kids are home." And so she started working at Front Street Cafe in downtown Brainerd, Minnesota, when I was 15, and she was there until I had my first child. And so thank you, Pastor Wayne, too, for just giving my mom a chance
Yeah.
outside of a really uncomfortable job, And so
Mm-hmm.
she waitressed, and just now she works at a little bookstore. She helps your mom in the lunchroom at that little Christian school. She aided there. Everybody loves my mom. She's so sweet. And then my dad, he was gone a lot, but when he was home, he really gave us his time. He taught me how to hunt. He would take me out in the deer stand. We'd go on the boat fishing all day long. I hated it, but I was with my dad, so I would bring a book, and he and my brother would fish all day. Um, like when he was able to be home, he was really present. He included us in what he did. He wasn't a dad that took off and did his own thing when he was home. He was all about family. And my dad's really fun and fun. I'm a lot like my dad. We're very similar. And so like he taught me my work ethic and how to
Mm.
do my best and always put everything into it. Good enough. I hate that phrase, oh, it's good enough. I don't like that because that means I didn't do my best, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really grateful for my parents, Chuck and Millie. Little shout out because they're wonderful people. They're really beloved by everyone that knows them. And I'm just really grateful for them as an example.
Absolutely. And I've always considered them as my third set of grandparents. Like
Yeah.
I'll call them Grandma Millie and Grandpa Chuck. Like even growing up,
Hmm.
up until now, like
Yeah.
and yeah, I could go on and on about the stories about both of them. But every time I see your mom, she wants to give me a big hug. Oh, hi,
Yeah.
Bailey, and your dad,
Yeah.
he gets the biggest smile on his face, and like I think part of him wants to like low key punch me in the face, but then but then he's like, just kidding. No, I'm not gonna do that. Gives me a big hug, and he's just the most compassionate, loving guy. Like when I
Yeah.
think of camaraderie and respect, like one of the biggest things I could ever think of is your dad. Like just whenever I
Oh,
see him, he wants to just give me a big handshake and like man to man. Like he's a lot older than I am, but he's still like I don't know.
yeah.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Like it really means a lot when he goes out
Mhm.
of his way. And even at I think it was Noah's wedding, you had asked me if I could help him get up because he was kind of struggling to with his knees and stuff. I don't remember if he had had his surgery at that point yet, but so he was, kind of struggling to get up, and I helped him get up. And there was another point, later on, a couple weeks later, I saw him at Aldi. Like your mom had got out, she gave me a hug, and he realized that I'm getting goosebumps again. He saw me in the car, and like it was wintertime, it was cold out. He opened up the door, and he made his way out of the car by himself with his, even with his knees, walked over to me and shook my hand and said, "Hey, I remember that time you helped me get up. I
Oh,
just want to say thank you for that." And I was like, "Well, it
so
was,
sweet.
man, I really didn't. It was really nothing. I just, helped you get up." But for him to get out of the car and shake my hand, like there was just so much, like I could just feel the respect flowing back and forth. So
I love that.
that really is beautiful. Your parents are amazing. I will. It'd be cool to to get both of them on here, but it'd probably. What do you
It'd have
say?
to be Dad
Chuck.
Bailey. uh,
What do you
yeah,
say? Tell a knucklehead to speak
exactly.
up. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Chuck, be nice. It's
Yeah.
Bailey. Uh,
Wow, you just nailed my parents.
love them to death. Love them to death. So
That's
you kind
awesome.
of touched on in the beginning how they didn't find faith until a little bit later on. If you don't mind sharing, like what
Sure.
started that with your family, and how did how did it progress to what it is today? Was there a lot of big differences in the beginning, or?
Yeah. I hope I get this right because my mom says that I remember things very differently than fact.
Sure. Well, what
But
is your version of the story, anyways?
this is my version. We're
I
going to
love it.
stick to it, right? Billy Graham, oddly
Mm.
enough, my Aunt Linda heard Billy Graham and found Christ through a crusade. And she brought Jesus back to Brainerd and started one by one sharing the gospel with my family, sharing this love of Christ with really unchurched people. Um, no church really. I remember getting baptized as a little girl, only because of photos when my brother was a baby, but really no church really. And so one by one, she just shared Christ with each of us. And I got saved, accepted Christ as my Savior when I was 10 at First Baptist Church through the Awana program. My now mother in law's best friend, Carla, led
Mm.
me to Jesus in the small gym during an Awana rally. And that same woman, Carla Dean, led my mom to Christ that same
Mm.
summer in the same building. Just we just saw this that Jesus loved us. And I don't think we realized it could be personal, that he made that sacrifice on our behalf so that we could have access to God and have our sins forgiven and have our life restored. And like I said, I had a great childhood, but there was a lot of drinking and yelling, and my mom didn't yell at us. I'm not saying that, but
Right.
um, just alcohol scared me when I was a kid. And like I was talking about the punches getting thrown, there's probably, alcohol involved in that, beer
Sure.
involved in those Sunday afternoons. And so my dad made such a switch when I was 14, and Jim Bishop, our youth pastor at church, came calling with Dave Sorensen, and they walked through the book of Romans with my dad, and my brother at the dining room table, my mom and I got to watch them find Christ and ask
Mm.
him to be their savior. And that like began this complete change in our family. That was at Easter time, if I remember correctly. And my dad's like, "You kids are going to that Christian school." I had my cousins were in a Christian school, my Aunt Linda's daughters. And
Yep.
so that fall we were enrolled. My dad took on a second job that winter working at the scrapyard with my Uncle Pete while my mom started waitressing. And my brother and I went to Lake Region Christian School. I was in the ninth grade. He was in the fourth grade. We started going to church 3 times a week. My dad stopped drinking. I never saw my dad drink again.
Mm.
Um, he totally loved God so much, and he took the gospel to his family. He was sharing it with his parents, with his brothers. And as far as I know, I am pretty sure all of his siblings have been saved because of his witness to them. My mother's have been because of my Aunt Linda, and
Mm-hmm.
then their witness with each other. And I remember after my dad had a heart attack when my son was 3 years old, he asked my son to pray for lunch. We were there for lunch one day. And my dad just started to cry when Caleb, as a small 3-year-old little boy, prayed, for God to bless his food to our body's use.
Mm.
And my dad started to cry, and he said, "Who would have ever thought a Mulholland um, would talk to Jesus like that, would like know God?" And it was really precious that my dad recognized this legacy had completely changed because of Jesus Christ. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a wonderful husband who loves the Lord. He was like in the womb at church, it's literally. And so we have very different faith backgrounds. His is very deep and very rich. His grandmother was the oldest person at our church during this big celebration for the 125th church anniversary, I think it was, Grandma Bertha. And she had been there as a child.
Wow.
And I remember she was holding our daughter as the youngest church member at First Baptist,
Oh, wow.
and like a generational thing that is so unexpected. So yeah, life changed a lot because of Jesus, and I'm just so grateful.
Absolutely. So what was it like? You kind of touched on it a little bit. What was it like going from the school that you were in? Were you homeschooled or where were you before?
No, we were in public school.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what
yeah.
was it like then transitioning into, Lake Region and being introduced? Did you know Keith or any of the Andersons before that? And what
No,
kind of was that?
Keith's gone. Sorry, I smacked my stand here. Keith had already graduated from high school. We're 5 years apart.
Okay.
So he was gone, but his sister, your mom, and I were in the same class. And so she was always so kind. I was really a dork and really immature and never shut up. I never knew when to stop talking. And I got in trouble a lot. I got demerits all the time for talking in class. And your mom was always so kind. I really, I was very different from everyone else. I just came in kind of like bam, and I didn't know hardly anything about the Bible. Even though I had accepted Christ as a 10-year-old, I hadn't really grown in my faith, and I wasn't, like in Sunday school every week. So every Bible story was brand new to me. I didn't know any of the songs hardly. It was so different, but I absolutely loved it. I was really getting bullied in the public school. Drugs were starting to infiltrate, like we'd go down to the where we'd hop on the next bus, and there was always somebody trying to sell us marijuana, and that scared the snot out of me. I
Mm,
was a pretty shy kid in that regard. I was pretty sheltered, I guess, kept really safe in my little world, and so that terrified me. So I was happy to leave that environment that I saw coming into our school and just go to a place where my cousins were and small class sizes. I had this amazing English teacher, Karen Perlinger.
mm,
She taught me so much about Christ and about relationships, just to understand how to apply the Bible to my life, how to really understand how getting to know God, being in His Word, not because of a checklist, not because of a to do list, but because of a love and a curiosity about Him. Karen really, she was my Bible teacher for 4 years, and I was so grateful to have her show me so much about Christ, so much about the
mm-hmm.
Word and Christian living. And she lived it and she loved us. Still loves us. We just saw her in October at your mom's wedding,
Beautiful
and
lady. Mm-hmm.
wonderful to see them again and just remember like she poured so much into me as this dorky ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th grade girl who had no clue what she was doing. And Karen just saw like, here's a sponge, let's fill her up. It was all like
I like that.
fascinating to me. Yeah, it was wonderful. So for my brother, it was a really hard transition academically. He hadn't learned phonics. One of the years that he was in kindergarten, they didn't do phonics. They did everything by sight. And so struggling to spell and my husband's the same way. He never learned phonics as a child. He has the worst, his spelling's atrocious. He would say it. I'm not letting out any secrets. So for Russell and for my husband too, those were harder transitions because it was so fast paced. So,
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to English class. All I had for English was reading, which I loved, and spelling. And then I step into a grammar class one day, and they're chanting the prepositions and adjectives and adverbs, and I was like, "What?" They're like, "Have, has, had, do, does, did, may." And I'm, what is this? What are they even talking about? I had no clue. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a harder transition, but just to catch up to everything. But thankfully, I was able to do that pretty quickly. For my brother, it was harder, but he too had teachers that poured into him,
Mm.
that saw that he had some needs that they could meet, and so we both graduated from Lake Region back in the day in the 90s and 89 and 93, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But so grateful for that place. It just really let us be who we were.
Absolutely. And then transitioning after high school, did you, and I just don't know, so forgive my ignorance, but did you
Okay.
go into college at that point? Or
Mhm.
what did it look like for you? What were your goals and what were your plans and how did it play out?
I kind of laugh because if I was 8 and you asked me what I wanted to be, and you're going to laugh when I say this, I would have told you a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader.
That's amazing. You still could. Come on.
No, I love their boots. I love the fringes. I thought that would be the best job in the world. And everybody laughed when I said that. I don't know why. It's kind of weird, Bailey. So, and that's what I do. I'm not a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, but I am a cheerleader for a living.
I love
I
that.
get to cheer people on, help them meet their goals. You know, that's what I do. Let me get you to the end zone. That's my
Right.
job.
Mm.
But I went to college for a year and a half. I had the Sunday school teacher who was always trying to get me to connect with his son. It was his son's birthday. You should send him a card. My son is in boot camp. You should send him a letter. He would love to hear from you. This guy was your grandpa Bob,
Mm.
and he was always trying to get me to connect with his son, and I wouldn't do it. But his son came home from boot camp and noticed me, and we've been married for 31 years now.
Mm.
And so life, I never went back to college. I got married and started having kids, and that's really all I wanted to be was a mama. I wanted 4 kids. We had 3, and I just, I don't know. He's such a good man. I'm so blessed by him, and I always knew Grandpa Bob was Team Rachel. You know, he he was trying to get that going before Keith
Oh,
even knew who I was, and
wow.
I thanked him for that as he was passing away. Just like, thank you for raising a good man, and thank you for always being on my side. Because
Mm-hmm.
he was pretty excited when Keith asked me to marry him.
Yes, I
Yeah,
did
he
it.
was like, finally. It was very sweet.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got to share a little bit of an experience like that with Grandpa as well, when he was, on his way, knocking at
Mhm.
the door of heaven there. And I was actually here and I was right in this room actually in Florida
Mhm.
and called my mom and she was in the hospital with him and had told him that, hey, Bailey and Courtney are getting engaged, and at the time he wasn't very responsive, but he could move his hand and some stuff, and
Mhm.
she said he started going crazy. So it's like,
Oh,
ah, man, that's
I
pretty
love
special.
it.
It's crazy
Yeah.
how influential people like that can be in our lives.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So one last little thing I kind of want to get into with you here. You've kind of touched on what you're doing right now for a business, and you don't have to get super deep into it unless you want to plug whatever you got. But do you think there was a point after after having having the kids where there was kind of a plateau and you're trying to figure out, okay, because I know you worked several jobs at that point. I think you worked at Christmas Point and the school, and was there ever a point in your head thinking, is this how it's always going to be? And was there a point right there when you kind of had those words, I'm fat, I'm stupid, I'm ugly? Was that period of your life where those were really prevalent? And
Mhm.
I know you kind of shared a little bit how you kind of got out of that, but what did that look like beforehand? And then now moving forward into this, how different is that from what it was?
Yeah. Well, I'm in a gut health company, and so we really focus on restoring your gut health, bringing insulin, blood sugars under control, really like getting to the root issues of people's health problems, autoimmune issues, Lyme disease, things like that. That's really been my focus for the last 10 years. But when a friend shared that with me, I was really in a dark place of depression, panic attacks. I
Mm,
never told anyone. never
sure.
never even told Keith. I was on antidepressants, but I hated how they deadened me, how they really took away from my relationship with my husband. And they didn't really seem to help. I still was depressed and I still was struggling. And I'd come home from work. I had 3 jobs at one point. I would come home from work so exhausted, lay on the couch and hope that the kids would just leave me alone for the rest of the night, or I'd go to bed because I had such a headache I couldn't function. I was taking 6 extra strength Tylenol 3 times a day to try to stay ahead of the headaches. I had headaches all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't know when my friend talked to me about this pink drink. I'm with Plexus, I'll just say it.
Yeah.
I didn't know when she shared that. I wanted to lose a little bit of weight. I wanted to get rid of this itchy rash that I had on my foot. And I kind of feel like God was patting me on the head, going, you have no idea what I'm going to bring to you and to your family because of this company. And so I didn't know that there was any fix to what I was dealing with that depression, especially. And I just thought this is life. I didn't really even know how to look past the end of my nose, if I'm honest, Bailey. There was no
Mm-hmm.
dreaming. There was no, oh, I hope one day. There was really no even praying about it, except for desperation of, please help me get through this day. I don't know if I can do this again. Was really what it was. I loved my family. I have great kids. I have a great husband. It was none of that. It was literally a physical depression, a clinical depression. And so I started using these products, had amazing support around me. And I think with starting to feel better, starting to have some energy, that depression fog was lifting. I was coming out of that. At the same time, I was also getting this benefit of people who wanted to pour into me and let me see that there were more possibilities for myself than this little box that I was
Mm,
in. And I'm not even talking about like the trips and the cars and the catalysts. It's not that. It was really just the who you can become
absolutely.
started with that question of what are some lies that you're telling yourself that aren't even true. And so stepping into this space of people wanting to see me succeed, people wanting to see me grow and be and do better, and teaching me how to lead, how to step into this role. I really was terrified of women. I had some, we talked about this a little bit the other day. I had some interactions and some friendships that went south and sour really hard. And it made me afraid to connect with women. I had jokingly told a new friend of the family, before we can become friends, I have an application I need you to fill out because if you're crazy, we're just going to stop this right now. And she laughed about it, but inside I was like, no, I actually kind of mean this. I wish I could give you an application. I don't know, you know. But
Uh,
I had built this wall of protection around myself, and I'd done it out of protection. But what happens when we build a stronghold of protection? It usually ends up becoming a prison.
mm,
I want to protect myself from relationships. I want to protect myself from being hurt. I want to protect myself from being embarrassed. I want to just protect my family. Now I'm stuck surrounded by all these bricks and all this mortar, and I have no way of busting out of this. Now I'm trapped here. I don't know how to have relationship. I don't know how to extend friendship. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. And so that whole time period allowed those bricks to just start falling away. I started letting people in my life. Ruthie Horner joined me in the company, and she was your choir director in high school. Loved
mm-hmm.
her to death. She really taught me about getting rid of this checklist Christianity where read your Bible every day, pray every day, listen to something good, give, bless, do all these things, go to church 3 times a week, tithe, do everything, not because you love God, because you're supposed to. She's
Mm-hmm.
like, Rachel, how about we love God because we want to love Him?
Mm-hmm.
How about we study the Word of God because we're curious and we want to get to know Him? How about we quit worrying about how long our skirt is and how big our heart is?
Mm.
And I'm so grateful for her because, Bailey, you remember me back in the day. I was so hard on myself and everyone else because I had standards up to here that were ridiculous because I was so unhappy with my own walk and my
Mm-hmm.
own self. And so that just got shoved everywhere else. And I even did a post last week. It's kind of funny, not really, it's kind of terrible, but I did a post on you don't have to expect that raising teenagers is going to be awful. How about if you have an expectation that's going to be wonderful? And I shared a little bit about this story, and I said I also quit being this legalistic checklist Christian and just started leaning into who God is and trying to love Him better. And I got a private message from someone who was very upset that I attacked Christian women and that I attacked their life. And I was like, whoa, that's not what I did at all. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
that's who I used to be 15 years ago. That woman that attacked me, that was very upset and she used the word, I was very offended by your post. Um, I was her 15 years ago. And so I couldn't even be mad that she sent me that letter or note on Facebook. I actually had compassion. Like, I hope you find a way out of feeling this way because I remember the bondage that I was really in. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was easier to point my finger and say what everyone else was doing wrong than to see, like, no, I need to address my own heart here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and so through all of that, I think, I still don't do it all right, and I still am terrible about my quiet time, like all these things. I wish my prayer life was better, but I also know that I have a God who loves me, and He's not waiting to zap me, and He doesn't want to squish us like a bug because we don't read our Bible for a week. He just wants fellowship
Mm-hmm.
with us. And there's so much grace and there's so much love. And I'm not talking about, I get to do whatever I want and drink and smoke pot because God's going to forgive me. It's not that. I don't
100%.
want to do any of that.
Right.
It's that um, I don't have to perform for Him. He already knows everything that's going on.
Mm.
And so why not just let Him see it and be honest with Him about it? And so
Mm-hmm.
those honest conversations with Him have been beautiful. And He still loved me in spite of all of the wickedness,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I'm so grateful for that. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
it really
It's
is.
beautiful. Yeah. We don't have to clean ourselves up for God. He already knows what a hot mess we are.
Mm-hmm.
He wants that acknowledgement. And because of a curiosity about who He is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that so much. A lot of different things came to mind when you were talking. And I will say, you said, Bailey, you did know who I was back then, and I did. And obviously, everybody has their moments, but I do specifically remember a time where I was spending the night at your place, and Caleb and I were sleeping on the floor upstairs, and I was scared. I wanted to go home. I wanted my mom, and
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Ah, this is scary." And I remember, I don't remember if you heard me or if Caleb went out to get you, but you came in and you got in the blanket, snuggled up between both of us, and like that's a memory that I'll never forget. Like I was very terrified to be there at that moment, and we were very young. We were still playing with army men and whatnot, and like you got out of your bed and you came and laid on the floor right in between us, and I was so comforted, and like that really curbed
Oh,
my stress, my anxiety as a little kid. So even though maybe you were thinking all this other things like, oh, I'm this, I'm that, at that time, like while
mm.
you were thinking it, you were still somebody that was very important to all of us, and um, so yeah, I'll never forget that. But I very much appreciate you sharing all that stuff. You get a little vulnerable at times when you're talking about these things, but it's all something that we can learn from. And like we talked about in the beginning, like we aren't defined by the things that we do. It's how we respond to those things. And
Yeah.
I also liked how you touched on, and I'm reading a book right now calling it's called "Finding God's Life for My Will" by Mike Donahue. We just got to
Oh,
see him in Bacchus, and I'll have to give it to you when I'm done. But my
yeah.
mom got it too. But it's talking about too, like there isn't a specific set of guidelines. There isn't like a blueprint for our life or something we have to do, or like you said, like worrying about, what'd you say, how long of our dress was instead of, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it reminded me of a verse that I read in that book, and it's Romans 8:28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And previously when I've heard that verse, I thought of like called according to God's purpose. Like, and I've heard the argument of, and maybe some people have this opinion out there, but, and if you do, I'd like to hear about it. But that God has this pre-planned thing for each and every one of us, that we don't get to decide how things operate in our life, but we are called according to his purpose. And it gets me thinking, well, what's God's purpose for us or for my life? And that calling isn't necessarily something that's going to happen. Like if I call you, you don't have to pick up the phone. I mean, you have the opportunity to answer if you want to and hear what I have to say, but that doesn't mean that's the way your life is going to go. Being called according to his purpose, it's like, well, his purpose, maybe it's, treat others as you'd want to be treated. Just live your best life, be your best self, and posture your heart to his. Like, lead with love, help other people to find the best in themselves. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are have to be, and for me, I don't have to be a police officer. You don't have to be out on the roads. Like, you can have just as much as effect, and even you going through school, like you were going through school you had a certain plan in mind, and you didn't get to that point because something you were made to be somewhere else
Hmm.
and make the most of that opportunity. And it's just being a beautiful person inside and out, like yourself, like living unselfishly, and like like your parents too, like just leading, living, loving, leading with that love towards other people. Like it doesn't really matter what you do in your life. It's I don't know, just being a good person, being kind, showing love. It can really go a long way. And I think a lot of people get too wrapped up of how they're supposed to do it and in what area they're supposed to do it. It's like just just do it. you know.
Hmm. And the opportunity presents itself, and thank you for that, Bailey. It's very sweet of you to say, because I have a lot of regrets about how I was a mom for a long time and just took life so seriously. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, everything was such a big deal. It's so ridiculous. Oh, hallelujah for probiotics. But um, but it can start so small. And this is a conversation I've had with people recently. Like, if someone comes to mind, shoot them a text. Hey, I'm thinking about you today. I'm praying for you. I think those little nudges of the Holy Spirit are the easiest way to begin to show love. I can buy coffee for the person behind me at Starbucks. That's great. And I've done that at Caribou. And it's so funny because
Sure.
it turned out to be somebody that I knew, so that was kind of fun. She was like, "Hey, you just bought me coffee." I got a text and I'm like, "Oh, hi. I didn't know that was you." Um, but I think people have a little sign on their neck. Ruthie has always said this. They have a sign around their neck that's invisible, but it says, "Help me be seen and valued.
mm,
Make me feel seen and valued." I just totally butchered what she says, but
that's
um, if we acknowledge the fact that I'm thinking about you, I recognize what you're doing. I try to, if there's a mom, I work with kindergartners at church on Wednesday nights, and I try to tell the mom when their kid does something good, because for so long I had to report about all the naughty things they were doing, and I don't like that,
mhm.
so saying like, this kid did a great job and they were so sweet. I remember, maybe, I don't know if I should share this, but we had a little guy that was very different from everybody else last year. And it was hard to have him around sometimes. And there was a little boy who worked so hard to be sweet and to be kind to him. And hey, where is he? I miss him. Is he coming tonight? Like, and to be able to go to the mom and say, hey, this is a really hard situation we're in, but your kid is being so compassionate right now.
Mm,
Like, those things matter so much to people. So um, if I have that nudging about someone, I'm trying to be better about actually stopping what I'm doing and taking action about it. And usually it's just shooting them a text or a Facebook message. Often that's all it is. And 99, I don't even think I'm exaggerating when I say 90% of the time, they're like, you have no idea how much I needed this.
mhm.
So my obedience to a nudging was actually what someone spiritually needed for their heart that day.
Right.
And you let me be a part of that, God? Like, okay, I'm going to do better about listening. Thank you very much. That's how we can easily show love. Just simply. But what's that take? 10 seconds?
Right.
You know?
And
Yeah.
a lot of times they do pop up in that kind of opportunity. I was just reading in this book. Um I had been missing out by just living for myself. How many divine moments had I missed in my life simply because I was too determined to live for my own agenda? And then moving on, he says most or a lot of ministry opportunities have a way of disguising themselves as inconveniences. So, it could be something like that little guy who was just kind of maybe it was causing a difficult situation, but those are the times where you have to jump out of your comfort zone, like you said, and go, all right, I'm feeling like I don't want to do this. And that's God saying, yep, come on. Let's
This
go,
is the
buddy.
thing. Yeah. Mhm. Absolutely.
Ah,
Absolutely.
so beautiful. Well, right at
Whew.
the time there. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy lady with grandkids running around here and there, dogs, and your little farm and whatnot you got going on. In
Yeah.
your busy schedule, I appreciate you making time to do this. It was a very beautiful
Thank,
conversation, and I'm excited for other people to hear it. So
thanks,
thank you so
Bailey.
much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. If our journey helps somebody else, like, it's all worth it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's when we don't. Can I just close with this?
Absolutely.
I remember Beth Moore saying, like, if we have a scar on our arm, we'll do everything we can to hide it, cover it up, wear a long sleeve shirt, put makeup on it, whatever. We don't want anyone to see that. But if we make our scars visible and we allow people to see, like, I healed from this,
Mm.
didn't knock me down, this didn't keep me out of the fight, I got back up, I healed. this is how I moved ahead, like then it's worth it. But if I pretend like life is wonderful and perfect and I've never made any mistakes, then everybody's like, well, that good for you. I'm so happy for you. But I'm stuck here feeling like a doofus.
Right.
I'm happy your life's perfect. Well, our lives aren't. So, man, be real with people. We don't have to vomit our troubles on people all the time.
Right.
That should be safe for a select few. But um, let your story bless somebody else. Then it's worth it.
Mm.
Otherwise, what's the point of all the pain?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Full
Mhm.
circle from when we started that
Yeah.
conversation to the tour guide. He was it. He wanted to share the story of his country because he wanted people to learn and
Mm.
understand that it doesn't have to be that way. We can love each other,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we can learn from our scars. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Bailey.
Yes. Well, thank you. I'm sure we'll do this again sometime soon.
Perfect.
I
I'm down for it.
love it. All right. Well, love you. Thank you so much.
Love you too.
All
Thanks.
right. Bye.